Why does the world seem to be crumbling before our eyes? Wars, floods, earthquakes, conflicts, and tragedies in every corner of the planet. It seems as if humanity is experiencing an endless collapse. Each new day brings news more devastating than the last. Entire peoples fleeing war zones, cities being swallowed by water, forests burning, families destroyed. And the question that echoes silently within each of us is always the same. What is happening to the world? Is all this just a coincidence? A natural cycle of the earth? Or is there something much deeper and more spiritual behind these events? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover now could completely change the way you see what's happening around us. We live in a time when fear seems to have become humanity's new language. Just turn on the television or open your cell phone to be inundated with tragedies, violence, hatred, and intolerance. It feels like we're going through a kind of dark night of the collective soul, a period in which human beings are forced to face the shadows they themselves have created. But what if all this isn't just the end, but the beginning of a transformation? What if these catastrophes are signs of a larger process, guided by spiritual laws most of us don't yet understand? This view that chaos is also a divine instrument of renewal is not new. Decades ago, the spirit Emmanuel mentor, Chico Xavier, already spoke about the great transformations that the planet would face in the 21st century. His psychographed messages, Emmanuel warned that humanity would be called to reevaluate its values, that pain and crisis would become the great teachers of the new era. He said that the earth would go through a time of purification, a period in which the forces of love and destruction would clash more intensely than ever before. And when we look at the world today, it's impossible not to notice the accuracy of these words. It's as if we are living exactly what Emmanuel described, the height of a spiritual transition, in which everything hidden comes to light both in social structures and within each human being. Wars don't just arise on battlefields. They begin within people's minds and hearts. The floods and earthquakes we see outside often reflect the inner turmoil we are all experiencing. But what really lies behind these catastrophes? Are they punishments? Coincidences? Or are they part of a greater plan, carefully guided by spiritual intelligences that have accompanied humanity's evolution since the beginning? Emmanuel asserted that nothing happens without purpose, that even suffering is a form of learning and progress. And it is precisely this perspective that invites us to see the world differently, not as a meaningless tragedy, but as a profound lesson that pushes us toward regeneration. Have you ever felt like things are speeding up, as if time had become shorter and events more intense? Perhaps this isn't just an impression. Emmanuel said that when a civilization reaches the limit of selfishness and indifference, the earth itself reacts. The forces of nature, which have always been under divine command, move to readjust the balance. And in this process, what is fragile crumbles, what is false is revealed, and what is true endures. Nothing that's happening is by chance. Every pain, every loss, every new beginning has a hidden meaning, even if we can't yet understand it. And it is on this hidden meaning that Emmanuel invites us to reflect. What lies behind wars, floods, catastrophes, and collective suffering can reveal much more than we imagine. Prepare yourself, because in the following words, we will delve deep into the spiritual explanations this great mentor. Perhaps, for the first time, you will understand that chaos is not the end, but the beginning of something much greater. Have you ever wondered why the world seems to be going through such a painful process of destruction and chaos? Why, even with so much technology, knowledge, and advancement, do we continue to face wars, natural disasters, floods, droughts, and seemingly endless catastrophes? It's as if the earth is crying out, begging for something humanity hasn't yet learned. What if I told you that, according to the Spirit Emmanuel, none of this is punishment, but rather a calling, a profound call for the spiritual regeneration of humanity? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. When we look at the world through material eyes, everything seems unfair, cruel, and senseless. Families losing everything in floods, entire peoples devastated by wars, earthquakes that wipe out lives and stories in seconds. At first glance, it's easy to wonder, where is God in all this? But Emmanuel, spiritual mentor of Chico Xavier, invites us to look from another angle. He explains that planet Earth is going through a process of spiritual transition, known in Spiritism as the period of regeneration, an inevitable passage between the world of trials and expiations, and a new era of harmony and fraternity. According to Emmanuel, nothing in the universe happens by chance. Every tear, every loss, every catastrophe is part of a larger movement, a kind of divine pedagogy. He said that suffering is the great school of souls, that storms purify the moral atmosphere of the world. These words, filled with wisdom, invite us to see pain not as punishment, but as a tool for improvement. It's hard to accept this when we're in the midst of chaos. But Emmanuel reminds us that humanity's spiritual evolution doesn't happen in comfort, but in transformation, and all transformation requires rupture. Have you ever noticed how, in times of tragedy, people come together in ways they wouldn't normally? How pain, paradoxically, awakens compassion, solidarity, and faith. Emmanuel saw this as a sign of the moral progress hidden behind physical suffering. For him, collective catastrophes are like great lessons, in which all of humanity is called to review its attitudes, rethink its priorities, and awaken to the true meaning of existence. And perhaps that's exactly what's happening now, a kind of final test, so we can advance to a new stage of planetary life. It is clear that Emmanuel was not talking about destruction, but Renewal compared the planet to a grand schoolhouse, where human experiences are lessons designed to prepare us for higher planes. According to him, what we call tragedies are actually natural adjustments within the laws of balance of the universe. When humans unbalance the environment, when they spread hatred, greed, and destruction, nature responds not to punish, but to restore balance. And this rebalancing, though painful, is essential for life to continue. Emmanuel said that God is not a judge who punishes, but a father who educates. The pains of the world are, therefore, invitations to reflection, alerts to conscience, silent message asking us to look within and correct the paths we've chosen. With every catastrophe, humanity is reminded of its own fragility and, paradoxically, of its spiritual strength. For it is precisely in moments of failure that human beings discover the power of faith, compassion, and hope. What Emmanuel proposes is a new way of seeing suffering, not as the end, but as a bridge to a new beginning. He believed that the earth is preparing for a great change, and that each of us is part of this transformation. But what does it mean in practice to live through this period of regeneration? How can we understand the role of each soul in this collective process that is shaking the planet? These are profound questions, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Have you ever had the feeling that the world outside is just a reflection of what exists within us? That the wars, catastrophes, and chaos we see every day on television might be a mirror of something much deeper, something that begins within the human soul. Emmanuel, the wise spirit who accompanied Chico Xavier, said that when the planet screams, it is because humanity is deaf to the voice of love. And this phrase, so simple and powerful, perhaps explains more about the moment we're living in than any scientific or political theory. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear now could completely change the way you see the world and yourself. We live in times when collective suffering seems to have become routine. There are tragedies, natural disasters, senseless wars, family conflicts, growing intolerance, a feeling that humanity has lost its way. But what if all of this were a mirror? What if the planet simply reflected what we as humanity have carried within ourselves? Pride, vanity, greed, indifference. Emmanuel explained that the earth is like a living organism that responds to the vibrations of its inhabitants. When humanity becomes disharmonious, the planet itself reacts. Seeking to restore the balance we insist on disrupting. Have you ever noticed how, amidst chaos, gestures of compassion, solidarity, and empathy also emerge? It's as if suffering, even painfully, is also an opportunity for awakening. Emmanuel asserted that major crises are not just physical events. but spiritual invitations to transformation. Every human tragedy reveals not only the world's pain, but also how much we still need to heal within ourselves. External wars are a reflection of the internal wars we still wage between love and selfishness, between forgiveness and pride, between spirit and matter. When we look outward and see destruction, it's natural to feel fear or anger. But Emmanuel invites us to reflect more deeply. What has each of us done to contribute to peace? He said there is no planetary balance without inner balance. As long as the human heart is at war, the world will continue to echo this disharmony. The earth is the mirror of humanity, and each of us is a living part of that reflection. The intolerance we see growing is the same that we often foster in small daily actions. The violence we condemn in others sometimes manifests itself in our words, in our judgments. In our silences, the planet will only be regenerated when man regenerates himself. This message from Emmanuel sums up the entire spiritual logic of the changes we are experiencing. He was not speaking of a punishment, but of a law of spiritual resonance. We reap outside what we sow within. The world transforms as consciousness awakens, and that is why every crisis, however painful, also carries a seed of renewal. Emmanuel taught that chaos is the prelude to harmony, that all pain has a purpose, and all suffering a message. But it's hard to see this when everything seems to be falling apart. When we lose someone, when we see injustice triumph, when hope seems to disappear. Emmanuel knew this. That's why he insisted on reminding us that true revolution doesn't begin with governments or with religions. It begins within every human being. Every act of love is a form of healing for the planet. Every elevated thought is a ray of light cast into the Earth's energy field. The regeneration he described is not just a collective event. It is a silent, individual transformation that begins when we decide to look within and acknowledge our own shadows. Have you ever wondered what would happen if every person in the world, for a moment, chose to forgive instead of condemn, to embrace instead of attack, to love instead of fear? Perhaps the planet, tired of screaming, could finally rest. And it is precisely about this awakening of human consciousness, this reunion with the divine essence that lives within each of us, that Emmanuel invites us to reflect on from now on. Have you ever felt, amid so much pain and confusion, that sense that something bigger is happening, as if the world were being prepared for a new beginning? When everything seems to be falling apart, when the news is increasingly heavy and hope seems to slip through our fingers, it's natural to think that we're nearing the end. But Emmanuel, the wise spirit who accompanied Chico Xavier, said something completely different. Nothing is the end. Everything is a new beginning. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear now could transform the way you see the world's pain and your own. Humanity is living in a time of trial, but also of profound spiritual awakening. Emmanuel explained that the earth is not being punished, as many believe. It is being purified. Every catastrophe, every crisis, every tear is part of a great process of cleansing, of moral and spiritual regeneration. Just as the body needs to eliminate what ails it to heal, the planet also needs to release the energies that imprison it in imbalance. In this process, however painful it may seem, carries within it the radiance of renewal. Have you ever experienced a moment when everything fell apart, but then, looking back, realized that that suffering made room for something better? This is exactly what Emmanuel teaches us about the destiny of humanity. Pain is not a punishment, but a divine instrument of growth. He said that pain is the chisel that carves the soul for tomorrow. And it is in this sense that every difficult experience becomes an opportunity for evolution. When illusions fall, when old systems crumble, space for the new is born, and it is into this void that light can finally enter. Emmanuel saw suffering as part of a loving and intelligent plan, guided by spiritual forces silently working for the progress of all. He asserted that, even in the darkest times, humanity was never abandoned. On the contrary, it is in these moments that the spiritual world comes closest, inspiring, comforting, and guiding hearts that open to faith. Through compassion, prayer, and inner reform, each human being can contribute to this planetary purification. becoming a point of light in the darkness that still looms over the earth. It is clear, in Emmanuel's words, that the future is not one of destruction, but of reconstruction. What seems like the end is merely the transition between an ancient world marked by violence, selfishness, and indifference, and a new era of fraternity and harmony. He said that the planet is being polished, like a rough stone that under friction and pressure reveals the brilliance hidden within. And this process, though difficult, is inevitable. Humanity's spiritual progress is a divine law, and no one can stop it. Suffering is fleeting, but learning is eternal. This was the essence of hope, according to Emmanuel. He didn't deny pain, but rather showed the purpose behind it. For him, hope is not passive waiting, but a living force that drives us to act with faith, to love even in the midst of chaos, to sow goodness where there is despair. Every act of love is a seed planted in the soil of the future, and it is this future that begins to sprout now. Even if we don't yet perceive it, what Emmanuel wanted to remind us is that we are not adrift in a meaningless universe. There is an order, there is a plan, there is a purpose. And even if the storm seems endless, it is clearing the way for a new light to be born. What will become of this new earth that is emerging? What role should each of us play in this spiritual transition that Emmanuel so foretold? That's what we'll reflect on next. Because deep down, Emmanuel never spoke only about the fate of the earth, but about the fate of each of us. He wanted to remind us that we are a living part of this process of regeneration, that every thought, every choice, every act of kindness are like small sparks that help illuminate the darkness of the world. And perhaps, precisely for this reason, speaking about hope is not an act of naivety, but of courage. The courage to believe in life even when everything seems to be falling apart. The courage to maintain faith when fear tries to paralyze us. The courage to continue sowing light even in the midst of the storm. And if this topic makes sense to you, if in some way these words touched your heart, leave it here in the comments. What made you reflect most? It could be an experience you've lived, a pain that transformed you, or simply how you see the moment we're going through. I read each comment carefully, because it's in this dialogue that Emmanuel's message lives on through each person, shares what they feel and believe, like this video also. Because when you do this, YouTube understands that this content has value and delivers it to more people who may need to hear this message right now. Sometimes, a simple click can bring comfort, faith, and hope to someone who is on the edge, searching for a sign that life still has meaning. And if you wish to continue following these spiritual reflections, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This way, you'll join me on this journey of learning and growth, constantly receiving new content about the messages of Emmanuel, Chico Xavier, and so many other spirits who work for the light. Your presence here is what keeps this space alive, and it's your support that allows more people to find this kind of content. After all, this channel is not just about spirituality. It is about unity, about awakening, about remembering that even in the midst of trials, no one is alone. And the more hearts connect with this vibration of hope, the stronger this chain that sustains the invisible and visible world becomes. Stay with me, because in the next words, we will delve even deeper into this process of spiritual renewal that Emmanuel described so much. And perhaps, by understanding this, you will realize that the end we so fear is, in fact, just the beginning of a new era. Look around you. Just turn on the television, scroll through your cell phone feed, or simply listen to conversations on the streets. The world seems to be collapsing. Wars multiply as if humanity has forgotten the value of life. Floods swallow entire cities. Earthquakes tear the earth apart as if the planet itself were crying out for help. The climate goes crazy, people move away, and fear becomes a constant shadow in our collective hearts. It's as if we're watching a spectacle of chaos, unsure whether we are spectators or protagonists of this tragedy. And amidst this scenario of disorder and uncertainty, a question begins to echo almost inevitably. Is all this truly the result of chance, or is there something much greater behind these events? This question, simple yet profound, has always divided opinion. For some, it's simply the logical consequence of human actions, environmental destruction, political selfishness, and a thirst for power. For others, there's an invisible force at work, leading humanity toward a kind of collective awakening, albeit a painful one. And it's precisely at this point that the serene and firm voice of Emmanuel, the spirit who guided Chico Xavier and who, since the last century, has been speaking of times of trial and planetary transformation, enters. Emmanuel was never a messenger of fear. On the contrary, he always brought words of lucidity, showing that behind every apparent catastrophe lies a hidden purpose, a truth that challenges our limited view of life. When he said that the earth is a great school, it wasn't a poetic metaphor. It was a revelation about the spiritual underbelly of the world we live in. Everything that happens, every tragedy, every loss, every conflict is part of a collective learning process. And the more humanity insists on ignoring the lessons of love, the more intense the experiences that force it to awaken become. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when Emmanuel spoke about the world's pain, he wasn't just referring to external wars, but also to internal ones. The battles we wage against pride, vanity, intolerance, and indifference. He said that external chaos is a faithful reflection of humanity's internal chaos. In other words, the planet screams what we as individuals try to silence within ourselves. The floods that devastate cities symbolize the emotional overflows we can't control. The fires represent the fury, resentment, and hatred that burn silently in our hearts. Seismic tremors are the tremors of consciousness we try to ignore until life forces us to look within. And perhaps this is the great revelation behind it all. The world is not falling apart. It is being rebuilt. But for something new to be born, the old must crumble. It's the same principle Emmanuel called the law of spiritual renewal. Humanity has reached a point where it can no longer sustain old patterns of selfishness, domination, and separation. The pain we are witnessing is the birth of a new consciousness, still fragile, still confused, but real. It's curious to note how throughout history, each moment of great crisis has preceded a profound change in human mindset. After darkness, light has always come. After war, learning. After loss, reconstruction. Emmanuel invites us to look at the present from this perspective, not as the end of times, but as the beginning of a new stage in humanity's spiritual journey, and that requires courage. The courage to change the way we view tragedies, to transform fear into understanding, and guilt into responsibility. Because what he always made clear is that nothing happens outside of divine law. There is no chance in the universe. There is cause and effect, learning and love in constant movement. When a natural disaster strikes, there is pain, yes, but there is also compassion, unity, solidarity. When a war breaks out, there is suffering, but there are also people awakening to the need for true peace. It is as if the Creator allowed chaos to remind us of the value of harmony. And what's most fascinating is that Emmanuel never separated the spiritual from the human. He spoke about politics, science, technology, behavioral, within a holistic view of existence. He argued that every advance humanity makes, even those that seem purely material, has a hidden spiritual purpose. Climate crises, for example, are not just environmental failures, but signs of a collective energetic imbalance. The earth responds to the vibration of its inhabitants. When fear and selfishness predominate, the planet reacts. It's like a sick body trying to eliminate a fever. It's hard to hear, but also liberating, because it means we have power over the future. Not the power to control nature, but to harmonize our own vibrations with it. Transformation begins within and spreads like waves. Emmanuel said that the regeneration of the earth begins with the human heart. And perhaps this is the hidden truth that many have not yet realized. We are not waiting for the planet to change. The planet is waiting for us. Think about this for a moment. All the wars, floods, droughts, and catastrophes we witness are, in a way, invitations to awareness. Invitations to step out of autopilot mode and see life more deeply. Every loss brings a lesson. Every pain conceals a calling. When everything seems to be falling apart, it's the soul asking to be heard. And as long as humanity continues to resist this call, the lessons will come more intensely not through punishment, but through love. Emmanuel always said that love is the force that moves the world. But when this force is forgotten, the universe finds ways to remind us, sometimes with sweetness, other times with impact. The important thing is to understand that everything works together for good, even when it appears to be destructive. What we call tragedy can actually be the beginning of profound spiritual healing. Therefore, rather than fearing what's happening, he invited us to observe. Leaving the surface and seeing the invisible behind the scenes of life, the world isn't a stage for random chaos, it's a school undergoing renovation. And like any renovation process, it's natural for there to be noise, dust, and discomfort. But that's how you build something new, by breaking down old walls to let the light in. And perhaps the true challenge of our generation is precisely this learning to trust the process. To understand that, behind the gloomy headlines, there is a divine order acting wisely. That the apparent collapse is simply the universe's way of rearranging the pieces for the next stage of evolution. After all, the Earth isn't dying. It's shifting frequency. And each of us is part of that shift. Comment here. That makes sense to me. I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding Emmanuel's spiritual vision of human catastrophes is like opening a window to another perspective, one that doesn't deny pain, but reveals the hidden purpose behind it. Emmanuel never spoke of tragedies as divine punishment. He was always very clear that the universe doesn't punish, it educates. And it is precisely this perspective that changes everything. When we look at suffering through this lens, it ceases to be a sentence and becomes a process, a path of transformation. According to Emmanuel, humanity lives in a great cycle of learning, a kind of cosmic school where each experience, no matter how difficult it may seem, serves to shape the spirit. He said that suffering is the great school of souls, and that collective pain is a tool for moral purification. It's difficult to accept this when we face loss, destruction, or injustice, but Emmanuel invites us to see beyond appearances. What we call tragedy can be the bitter medicine that cures humanity's spiritual illness. Think of great floods, wars, and seemingly inexplicable disasters. Each of these events, however devastating, has a profound impact on the collective consciousness. People unite, compassion awakens, and selfishness gives way to solidarity. It's as if physical chaos gives way to moral light. Emmanuel compared these phenomena to storms that cleanse the air. Storms purify the moral atmosphere of the world. When humanity strays too far from the path of love, the universe responds, rebalancing forces, bringing everything back to the axis of harmony. This idea of purification is central to Emmanuel's vision. He said that the earth is undergoing a period of regeneration, a natural transition from a world of trials and expiations to one of harmony and fraternity. It's as if we're in the midst of a great planetary spiritual reformation. Everything that is incompatible with the Earth's new vibration is coming to the surface to be transformed. And this process, although seemingly destructive, is actually a profound cleansing operation. Emmanuel often used the metaphor of the farmer. Just as a farmer must turn the earth, cut away dead branches, and prune what doesn't bear fruit, God allows certain events to shake the world so that life may flourish more purely later. He said nothing essential is lost. Only what is transitory is removed. This is the hidden truth that few can see amidst the pain. What roars as destruction is, in essence, a movement of creation. This perspective completely changes the mindset with which we face difficulties. Because if tragedies are instruments of collective learning, then we are not at the mercy of chance, nor are we victims of a cruel fate. We are evolving apprentices, undergoing necessary tests to awaken our consciousness. And this is not theory, it is a practical journey, visible in every gesture of solidarity that emerges after a tragedy. It is love blossoming from the devastated ground. Emmanuel also explained that this process of regeneration doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, full of ups and downs, like a long night before dawn. The pain we see in the world is a sign that dawn is near, but we still need to cross the shadows. He said that humanity finds itself in the midst of the redemptive storm that prepares the new day. And the most fascinating thing is that this storm isn't an external event, but an internal one. It's within each of us. Fear, hatred, intolerance, difference all. These are the winds we must confront within our own souls. Emmanuel insisted that the planet only transforms when humanity transforms. There is no global regeneration without inner reform. He called this the law of spiritual correspondence. The external world reflects the internal state of humanity. And, looking closely, it's impossible to deny this truth. The violence we see outside is a projection of the aggression we still cultivate. Climate imbalance is a reflection of our emotional and ethical imbalance. The borders that divide nations are the same ones we build within our hearts. But if all this sounds heavy, Emmanuel brought a message of hope that transcends time. He said that nothing is lost, because love is the sovereign force of the universe. Even when everything seems to be falling apart, there is a divine intelligence guiding the course of things. He compared God to an invisible conductor who transforms the dissonant sound of suffering into a symphony of learning. And this metaphor is powerful because it shows that, although the melody of life seems confusing to our human ears, there is a greater harmony being built note by note. This is the essence of regeneration, not a distant promise, but an ongoing process. Emmanuel said that the planetary transition has already begun, and that every soul incarnated at this time has a spiritual responsibility in this process. We are being called to shift our frequency, to choose compassion over judgment, to seek truth over fear. And this requires awareness, firm decisions, and, above all, faith in the divine pedagogy that governs the universe. He also warned about something that seems more relevant today than ever: the danger of being carried away by appearances. He said that modern man, by distancing himself from spirituality, loses the ability to see the hidden meaning of things. The hidden truth of tragedies is that they are opportunities in disguise, portals of renewal. And as long as we see only the superficial drama, we will remain trapped in the cycle of pain. But when we open the eyes of the soul, we realize that every challenge is a call to evolution. This change in mindset is the first step toward regeneration. Emmanuel said that the new world will not come from outside, but from within, from the consciousnesses that awaken to the light. And when this awakening multiplies, chaos will naturally cease, because humanity's collective vibration will have shifted. The earth, as a living organism, will respond to the new frequency. That's why he said, when humanity learns to love, the storms will cease. Notice how profound this is. It's not just about hoping the world improves, but about taking action to make it better through us. Every elevated thought, every compassionate gesture, every sincere prayer contributes energetically to planetary balance. The invisible sustains the visible. And perhaps this is the most revealing point of Emmanuel's entire message. There is no separation between spirit and matter, between the human and the divine. Everything is interconnected in a single network of vibration and purpose. When we look at the world through this prism, something changes within us. The pain doesn't disappear, but it begins to have meaning. Fear gives way to confidence. Hopelessness transforms into purpose. And it is at this point that regeneration begins to happen, silently, within the heart of each person who decides to look at life with new eyes. And if there's one thing Emmanuel has always made clear, it's that humanity's destiny is not destruction, but enlightenment. Storms pass. Suffering transforms. The soul evolves. The planet renews itself. Everything follows a divine plan that, though invisible, is perfect in every detail. Write it down. I'm on that journey too. Oh, I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when Emmanuel spoke about the chaos of the world, he wasn't just describing earthquakes, wars, or floods. He was talking about us, about what happens within each human being when the spirit distances itself from love. According to him, humanity's great crises are in fact, a reflection of the moral and spiritual disorders we still carry within. It's as if the planet were a huge mirror and everything we see on the outside is merely a reflection of what still needs healing within. Emmanuel said that when the planet screams, it is because humanity is deaf to the voice of love. This phrase sums up the essence of what we are experiencing today. The earth is not sick by chance. It is reacting to the vibration we ourselves emit. Every time pride speaks louder than humility, every time selfishness stifles empathy, every time fear extinguishes faith, the balance is broken. And nature responds. Wars, disasters, and divisions are not the work of divine punishment, but clear signs of a spiritual system trying to readjust itself. It's hard to admit this, because it's always easier to point outward than to look inward. But Emmanuel insisted, the outside world is a mirror of the human soul. The violence that explodes in the streets is the same violence we harbor in thoughts of anger and intolerance. The rampant materialism that destroys the planet is fueled by our own pursuit of status, power, and consumption. And indifference to the pain of others is a reflection of the spiritual void that so many still try to fill with fleeting distractions. This is one of the most uncomfortable and, at the same time, liberating hidden truths. The world only changes when we change. There is no collective regeneration without individual transformation. Emmanuel taught that the first battlefield to be won is not that of nations, but that of the human heart, because it is within it that the most decisive wars are fought. The wars between good and evil, between pride and humility, between love and fear. And perhaps that's why so many people today feel lost, tired, and confused. We are in a time of revelation, when everything that was hidden comes to light both in the world and within ourselves. External crises only accelerate the process of inner awakening. They force us to stop, reflect, and rethink the path we've taken as a species. Emmanuel said, God allows pain to awaken those who sleep in the comfort of illusion. This phrase, though harsh, carries profound wisdom. Sometimes, it's the impact of pain that makes you open your eyes to what truly matters. Think about it. How many people only discovered the value of life after losing something or someone? How many only learned the meaning of faith after experiencing darkness? Emmanuel saw pain as a tool for reconstruction, not destruction. He said that suffering, when understood, is an invitation to awaken. The planet, in this sense, is like a vast spiritual organism in healing, and its conscious cells are participating in this restoration process. But there's something even deeper in this teaching. Emmanuel explained that the earth responds to humanity's vibrational pattern. This means that every emotion, every thought, and every action generates energetic waves that accumulate in the collective field. When millions of people vibrate fear, hatred, and hopelessness, the planet's spiritual atmosphere thickens. But when we vibrate faith, compassion, and love, this same atmosphere is purified. This is why he said that storms purify the moral atmosphere of the world, not just in the physical sense, but in the vibrational sense. This is a powerful revelation, because it shows that regeneration doesn't depend solely on great leaders, governments, or cosmic events. It depends on small, daily decisions. On how we treat others, on how we react to injustice, on how we think, speak, and feel. Every gesture of kindness, every lofty thought, every sincere prayer is a force silently working toward the moral reconstruction of the planet. And this leads us to an inevitable reflection. If we want a world at peace, we must first heal our internal wars. The anger we feel, the resentment we carry, the judgment we harbor, all of these are silent bombs that detonate within us and reverberate throughout the collective. Emmanuel invites us to look at these shadows with courage, not to deny them, but to transform them into light. Because the true field of regeneration is the human heart. He said that the reformed man within himself is the seed of the new world. This phrase has immense impact when we truly understand what it means. It's not a poetic discourse, it's a spiritual law. Each awakening soul changes the frequency of the planet. And when enough consciousnesses rise, the world inevitably changes. This is how regeneration happens, from the inside out, one soul at a time. But it takes courage to look within. Courage to face pride, fear, and attachment. Emmanuel explained that pain, in these cases, acts like a broken mirror. It shows us fragments of what needs healing. And the more we resist this reflection, the more it repeats itself in the form of external crises. Therefore, the challenges we collectively experience are not a punishment, but a call. A reminder that there is still work to be done within the human soul. This journey of self-transformation is silent, but it has a gigantic impact. When a heart becomes peaceful, the world becomes a little lighter. When someone forgives, the earth's vibrational field rises. When a person chooses understanding over criticism, they break the cycle of pain and help humanity breathe a little easier. Emmanuel called this invisible service of light, small actions, yet full of spiritual significance. And in this context, every tragedy, no matter how painful, can become a portal to consciousness. Because it is in pain that human beings learn to truly feel. It is when we lose control that we realize how much we need something greater. Emmanuel said that the soul that suffers is like clay in the hands of the potter, molded by experience, polished by faith. This image is powerful because it shows that we are not being broken, but rather sculpted. Now imagine if every person understood this. If each of us decided to act from compassion instead of fear, the world would change instantly. Emmanuel believed this deeply. He saw humanity's future with hope because he knew that love is inevitable. Pain can delay, but it cannot prevent. Awakening, and perhaps this is the point we most need to remember. Everything we experience today is part of a larger process. Humanity is maturing spiritually, and each crisis is a step on this evolutionary ladder. Emmanuel said that collective suffering is the birth of the new era. And like all births, it is painful, but it brings new life. So, if the planet is screaming, perhaps it's because we haven't yet learned to listen. But we are learning. Little by little, through mistakes and successes, each soul is opening to the awareness that there is no separation, that everything we do to others, we do to ourselves. And it is this realization that begins to heal the world. Comment here that makes sense to me. There's something profoundly beautiful in the way Emmanuel spoke about hope. He never treated it as a mere passive belief, as if we were just waiting for fate to sort things out, but rather as a living force, an inner flame that drives us to continue, even when everything seems to be falling apart around us. For him, hope was a kind of silent contract between the soul and the divine, a reminder that, no matter how dark the path seems, there's always a new dawn waiting to be discovered. This vision wasn't an empty promise, but a profound understanding of the very spiritual structure of life. Nothing is the end. Everything is a new beginning. Emmanuel said that the destruction, losses, and shocks we face are merely phases in humanity's great journey toward the light. Just as a forest needs fire to be reborn stronger, the human spirit sometimes needs to navigate chaos to regain balance. Pain is the chisel that sculpts the soul for tomorrow. This simple yet powerful phrase conveys the core of his message. There is no suffering in vain. Every tear, every fall, every apparent defeat is an opportunity for reconstruction, an invitation to true transformation. And when he spoke about the planet, Emmanuel always emphasized that the earth is not being punished, but purified. There is a huge difference between punishment and purification. Punishment is driven by retribution, by guilt. Purification, on the contrary, is driven by love. It is the natural process of cleansing and renewal that precedes every new phase of existence. He said that humanity is moving from a world of trials and expiations to a world of regeneration, where fraternity, compassion, and spiritual awareness will be the new foundations of coexistence. This transition, however, requires courage, because regenerating the world is first and foremost regenerating one's own heart. When we observe the world's pain from this perspective, something within us changes. Fear gives way to understanding, and outrage gives way to spiritual responsibility. Emmanuel invites us to see each tragedy not as a desperate end, but as a mirror that reveals where we still need to grow individually and collectively. Wars, crises, diseases, and even natural disasters, according to him, are symptoms of an ongoing healing process. Humanity is being invited to wake up, to leave the illusion of separation, to realize that the suffering of one affects the whole. And perhaps that's why Emmanuel spoke so much about compassion. He saw empathy as the antidote to Earth's pain. It's not enough to simply understand the spiritual causes of problems. We must act lovingly toward them. It is through compassion that we become instruments of healing and collaborators in this divine process of renewal. Prayer, charity, forgiveness, and a sincere effort to improve oneself are for him the true tools of regeneration. Every small gesture of kindness is a seed of light, sown in the soil of the world, and it's curious to see how this message connects with so many universal truths. In different spiritual traditions, the cycle of destruction and rebirth appears as a constant. What dies gives way to the new. What dissolves makes room for what needs to flourish. Emmanuel simply translated this into the language of the human spirit in transition. He said that pain is not the enemy, it's the messenger. It's what alerts us to what needs to be transformed. It's what pushes us when we insist on remaining stagnant. The difference lies in how we choose to react. There are those who see suffering and give up. And there are those who see suffering and awaken. Emmanuel invites us to be part of the second group. He believed that the earth is being shaped like clay in the hands of the potter, and that we are the living particles of this changing clay. Every elevated thought, every conscious decision, every act of forgiveness is a way of collaborating in the construction of this new world. Spiritual progress doesn't happen externally. It begins within each of us. In the way we deal with daily life, with other people, with our own wounds, and it is at this point that hope becomes more than a feeling, it becomes a decision. Deciding to believe in good even when evil seems to prevail. Deciding to get up even after falling. Deciding to keep walking even without seeing the horizon. This is hope, according to Emmanuel, an active force, manifested in attitudes, thoughts, and daily choices. It is the silent impulse that keeps the light of faith burning. Because if Emmanuel said that the earth is undergoing a process of purification, this means that we are also being invited to reevaluate our priorities, our beliefs, and the way we view life. This transition is not just planetary, it is personal. Every crisis we experience, whether in the world or within ourselves, is a call for change. We are being challenged to abandon the mentality of separation and embrace a consciousness of unity. It is at this point that hidden truths begin to reveal themselves. The outer world is nothing more than a reflection of our inner world. If there is destruction out there, it's because disorder still exists within. If there is selfishness in social structures, it's because we still feed it in our thoughts and attitudes. Emmanuel reminded us that the planet is not transformed by divine imposition, but by the transformation of the souls that inhabit it. We are co-authors of Earth's regeneration, and every act of light counts. Sometimes the greatest gesture of love we can offer the world is simply not to give up, to continue believing in our purpose, even when everything seems to contradict that faith. And somehow, this is what makes Emmanuel's hope so timely. He wasn't speaking from naive optimism, but from a confidence built on spiritual experience. It's as if he were saying, yes, the world is in turmoil, but this pain has meaning. This pain has direction. This pain is the birth of a new era. And when we look at it from this perspective, something changes within us. We stop fearing chaos and begin to see it as part of the divine process of reordering. Hope, therefore, is the invisible thread that connects what we were to what we will yet be. And Emmanuel reminds us that this thread never breaks. It only changes shape, renews itself, and strengthens as we grow. Every challenge is an opportunity for evolution. Every pain, a bridge to love. Every fall, a call to rise with greater wisdom. Comment there. That makes sense to me, if you've made it this far. It means you truly wanted to delve into this topic and reflect on everything Emmanuel brought us about hope, transformation, and the true meaning of the world's crises. And I want to invite you to continue this journey with me. If this content resonated with you, if it sparked any reflection or awakened something within your heart, leave a simple phrase in the comments, like I'm with you until the and/or this message was for me. A way to show that you participated in this moment, and to connect with others who are also seeking to understand the world from this deeper perspective. While you're at it, if you enjoyed the video and felt this connection, give it a quick like. Not only because it helps the channel, but because it's a gesture of recognition for what we've built together. Hear this exchange of ideas, reflections, and energy. And if you want to continue receiving more content like this, which explores spiritual messages, reflections, and lessons from Emmanuel, subscribe to the channel. It's just one click to ensure you don't miss future videos and continue following this journey of growth and self-transformation.ou. And there's a video right here that complements this topic, delves even deeper into spiritual messages, and shows other ways to understand how each of us can participate in the world's regeneration. Click and stay with me there, because the journey doesn't end here, it's only expanding. And there are many more revelations and insights awaiting you.